Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to be reviewing the Fast Ace fork made for the Sur Ron. It's called the ALX13RC. Now this fork was provided to us for free by Fast Ace, but that will not affect what we say in this video. We are going to be giving our unbiased and honest opinion. So this is a $699.99 fork. So it's quite a bit cheaper than the Fox 40 and even the Marzocchi Bomber. It is an inverted fork, which is something that we like in terms of rigidity and use of a front fender. And it is a spring fork with an open oil bath design. So with that said, we're going to unbox it and get it installed on the bike. So looks like the top of our triple tree and screw. Honestly, these look so much better than the D&M. It actually is lathed. So first impressions just on the build quality is it's definitely pretty heavy, which could be a positive or a negative depending on how you look at it. I believe it's about 11 pounds, so 5 pounds heavier than the Fox 40 and I think roughly 2 or 3 pounds heavier than the stock D&M fork. The build quality I'm actually impressed with initially. You can see kind of like the ridges from the machining along here versus like cast, something that we saw in the D&M. Overall, I think I'm impressed first off, and I expect to have a lot more rigidity out of this fork than with the D&M or the Fox 40 for that matter. As we picked up to go put this on the bike, we noticed a couple things that are a little interesting. The first is that it doesn't seem to have like any resistance at all. We're going through like easily half the travel with maybe like a quarter of my body weight. Like there's no way I'm pushing down more than like 50 pounds here, and we're using almost the entire fork. Here we are about 2 months after the first part of this video was filmed. We weren't totally satisfied with the spring rate of the fork as it came. It was just obviously too soft to put on the bike. We knew we wouldn't be happy with it. So we reached out to Fast Ace and we did get some information. The fluid sound in the fork is completely normal. It's just an open bath system, and there was nothing concerning there. We just hadn't heard it before. And as far as the spring options go, this fork is shipped with a 38-pound spring in it. And Fast Ace has two other options. They have a 38 to 60-pound spring, progressive spring, and then they have a full-on 60-pound spring, which is what I am holding in my hands here. After feeling how soft the 38-pound spring rate was, we were pretty confident that that's not something we were interested in, and so we opted to wait for the 60-pound spring to come back into stock. We got it shipped to us, and we will be installing that into the fork before we install the fork onto the bike. So we're not going to show the whole installation of the fork today, just a few key moments. We recovered our bearing and lower seal from the stock fork. We're doing a budget build. We don't want to spend money where we don't have to. To put that on, the trick is to just hammer it in with a PVC that slides right over it. It's the best way to do it. And then for putting the spring in, it's kind of like not a standard thing to do, so we're going to show it real quick. Basically, you got to take off the section of fork that has the brake caliper mount on it, and there's Loctite on a set screw on the back. So
after quite the battle, we were able to finally get this lower bracket off of the stanchion. We had some trouble along the process, as this was a learning experience for us. The set screw that goes in here we initially stripped out partially from not using any heat. So we had to use quite a bit of torch time in order to get that out. And then after we finally removed the set screw, finding a way to clamp this to the vise and not having the stanchion spin against our component here while we were trying to remove it was a struggle. As you can see, you know, shop towels, we tried a lot of different things. We tried, you know, our adjustable wrench here, but ultimately we used some spare rubber from an inner tube lying around in order to get as much grip as possible to rotate against, and then just, like I said, a whole lot of torch time. So in retrospect, you know, if we had the proper tooling, the proper clamping mechanism to hold the stanchion, and had known, you know, what the proper amount of heat was to use, this process could have been a lot smoother.
Now that we have it on the bike, it is time for some close-ups. Overall, I am quite pleased with the looks of this fork. It doesn't have any bright colors like the Fox 40, which means it will look good on just about any bike's color scheme. In general, I think the inverted style moto fork fits my taste better than the mountain bike style lowers. A huge plus to the inverted style of fork as well is the ability to have a large fender that keeps dirt and mud off your bike and out of your face. There isn't any glossy Kashima coating or variable color options, but for the price point, I have no complaints. Additionally, you're able to purchase the fork with whatever spring rate you desire, so replacing it is only necessary if you want to change your fork after you've already purchased it. With the 60-pound spring on this fork, we immediately noticed that it was out of balance with the rear stock shock. We had a Von Cat shock on hand that we threw on the bike, and I have to say the rigidity of both those suspension components add up nicely to a rigid and balanced chassis. The pair of them works great. We took some slow motion comparison shots of Grant on the Fast Ace and Riley on the Fox Factory 40. We have ridden the most common forks out there for the Sur Ron, and our ranking from worst to best is the RST Killa, then the D&M, the Fast Ace next, and then the Fox 40 Factory last. The RST Killa is so soft that it's unusable. In my opinion, it's not a viable option for any rider over 140 pounds on the road, and probably not viable for anyone of any weight off-road. The D&M was way too stiff, but it was tolerable off-road because its rigidity meant the bike was stable off jumps and drops. The rebound damping on the D&M was also functional, but the compression and preload were practically useless. For the Fast Ace, it comes in right at the sweet spot of rigidity between the D&M and the RST Killa. If you weigh more than 150 pounds, I highly recommend getting the Fast Ace with the 60-pound spring. I think 50 would be a little bit too light, and 38 is just not a viable option for someone of our weight. It's pretty comfortable on the low-speed hits, but we will have to wait for the snow to dry up on the mountain before we really form our opinion on the trail about how comfortable it is riding fast over high-speed bumps over a long period of time. We did try and play around with the rebound and compression settings on the Fast Ace, but they did not seem to have much effect as far as we could tell. Changing the spring really seems to be the only adjustment, if you can call it that affected the feel of the fork. While it's not as adjustable as the Fox 40, nor is it as comfortable to ride, it is less than half the price and does show some upsides with the inverted design. As we ride on the trails more, please expect a follow-up video when we really have our opinions formed.
So we ditched the original stock suspension for the Fast Ace and the Von Cat rear suspension. Initially, the first thoughts that come to mind are stiffness. The RST Killa is completely undersprung for my weight. Just sitting on it, you know, at 215 pounds in full riding gear, I immediately sag through half of the travel. And then if you try and go off of any sort of lip on a jump, you squish through all of it just on the takeoff. The difference after taking this thing around this little industrial park here, just on some little hits, is night and day. You know, I can jump it off of a little loading dock and hit a little step up, no problem. You know, the travel is not even close to its full capacity, and I feel like I can actually go put this thing through its paces, and I'm excited to take it out on trail.